Hey everybody at The Kind Faith, I'm Jeff. Really glad that you joined us this weekend for the message. We'd love it if you would like this video, forward it on to friends when you're done with it. We're diving into the book of Mark. We've been in the book of Mark, and last week we talked about disciple making. This week we're going to talk about, we're going to take a different tack, I guess I should say, with all of this. And my question to lead this off with is, has there ever been a time where you really got it wrong spiritually? Where you really didn't have it together and got the wrong answer or didn't communicate the right thing? When I was in seminary, I got assigned this passage. We're in Mark chapter 1, verse 35. And it says this, and rising very early in the morning, well, it was still dark. And you'll remember, by the way, Jesus has just spent the day and the evening healing everybody who came to Simon's mother-in-law's house and healing them and healing her. So it says, and rising early in the morning, while it was dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. And they found him and said to him, everyone is looking for you. And he said to them, let us go out to the next towns, that I may preach there also, for that is why I came. And he went throughout all Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. And a leper came to him, imploring him, and kneeling said to him, if you will, you can make me clean. Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I will be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him, and the man was made clean. And Jesus sternly charged him and sent him away at once and said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priests and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded for a proof to them. But he went out and began to talk freely and to spread the news, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in desolate places, and people were coming to him from every quarter. So we talked about the big question last week with the disciples, which is, what does it mean to be a disciple? And in some ways that question carries on in this passage. Did you notice the repeated word? There's a repeated word, but before we get to it, I've got to tell you the story of when I got it wrong, right? Some of you are like, well, when did you get it wrong? Well, in seminary, I had this passage, and I was assigned to preach on this passage. We all were assigned to preach on this passage. There were 10 of us in the class, and we went to the little chapel at Fuller Seminary in Pasadena, and we were to preach on it. And I think it was a trap, or a setup. I'm not quite sure, but it was a tough day because every single one of us came to this text and we realized contextually, right, we're trying to be good seminary students, that Jesus had been healing and doing all of this work, and Simon's mom was feeding them, and she was doing, there was just all this energy and effort in the chapters before. And then it says, and rising early in the morning, while it was still dark, he went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And every sermon, and I'm not kidding, every sermon, including mine, sounded something like this. Jesus had been out in Galilee and Capernaum, preaching and teaching and healing. People had been coming nonstop. Jesus was tired. And when you're tired, you should go out to a garden and have some quiet time with your Heavenly Father, because that's really what gives you the rest you need. Just about every sermon, right? And, you know, that could be a good sermon, but definitely not on this passage. In fact, the professor got up afterward and said, here's what I heard all of you say. Jesus was tired. He needed a rest, so he went to pray to his Father so that he could get the rest that he was looking for. And he said, you all got it wrong. We were all embarrassed. Thankfully, our grades weren't dependent on what he had just said to us. But what he pointed out was this little recurring word. Did you hear it? It actually frames this. Jesus went out very early in the morning to a desolate place. And in the very last verse, right before chapter 2, verse 45, it says, but Jesus was out in the desolate places. Did you catch that? Did you notice that Mark has used this in chapter 1 several times? Did you notice that John the Baptist was out in a desolate place? Did you notice that after the baptism of Jesus, he went out into a desolate place to be tempted by Satan? This desolate place wasn't a beautiful garden of rest and a place for peaceful contemplation with God. This desolate place was a different kind of desolate place. John the Baptist, out in a desolate place. And where was he? He was out at the Jordan River, where the threshold between desert wandering and the promised land of God existed. And there he was at the crux of it, almost begging the question, are you going to step over through the water and into the promises and the promised land of God or not? This desolate place was a decision place. And Jesus gets led out into a desolate place. And what happens in Jesus' desolate place? Satan shows up and tempts him. And your mind could immediately go to other desolate places in Scripture, right? The people of God cross the Red Sea and enter a desolate place, the Sinai Peninsula, that desert that is there. And what happens there? They're tempted. Moses goes up on the mountain and Aaron makes a golden calf, and the people of God are tempted there, and hearts harden or are softened in the desolate place, and faith is tested and sometimes fails in the desolate place. When this word shows up, you expect temptation to come. In fact, when you read this passage, it says, and rising very early in the morning while it was still dark, he departed and went out to a desolate place. And knowing the context of all of this, you kind of expect Satan to show up. You should. And he does. He does. And you're thinking, where? Where in the passage does he show up? But look at this. And rising very early in the morning while it was still dark, he departed and went out to the desolate place where he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. And when they found him, they said, everybody loves you. You're a star. You're what everybody's been hoping for. You're a hit. You could have a great career at this. This is awesome. This movement that you called us to, man, we're popular. You're popular. Jesus, you've got to come back. What's the temptation? You expect a temptation. You expect Satan to show up bringing temptation. And now I'm not calling Simon and those who are following him Satan, but I am saying that Satan is bringing a temptation again in the desolate place to Jesus about popularity, about fulfilling other people's expectations. And that is what was happening. And what does Jesus do? And he said to them in verse 38, let us go on to the next towns where I'm not popular. Ooh, this is a huge statement of what it means to be a Jesus follower, what it means to be a disciple. Not only, and we talked about this last week, does it mean that I'm going to be teaching this gospel under Rabbi Jesus, and I'm going to have authority over the spiritual realm under this incredible, powerful Son of Man, Jesus, but I am also called to a position where I don't pursue popularity, where I intentionally put myself in places where I'm unknown to declare the message of God. Not just going to where it's familiar, not just going to where I'm popular, not going to where I know I will have success. That was the temptation that was here for Jesus. Man, Of all of the challenges of being a disciple, I think this is the hardest one. Because this challenge says, I need to examine my life and I need to look at the places where I'm popular and comfortable. And I need to move out from there. One of the things that's been a huge conviction for me as a pastor for the 30 years I've been a pastor is that my only real friends have been church friends. I mean, isn't that the case even for many people who go to church? I survey it, I look around and I say, who are your friends? And I'll ask you, who are your friends? Who are your friends? Who are the people that you spend most of your time with? As a Christian, my guess is other Christians. And we show up at a church, and this is how it goes, right? You're in a new community. You want to make connections. That's a good thing. You want to find a church. That is a good thing. So you go to that church. And the people at the church, you find some that you really want to connect with and you really like. And you've had coffee on the courtyard and you've shared some donuts and it's awesome. And so you get involved and you engage with those people and you think, oh my gosh, let's have these people over for dinner and these people over for dinner. And pretty soon you've got a list of 30 people that you want to have over for dinner. And no human being that I know on the planet has back-to-back, night-to-night dinners out with people. And that's what the church offers us. And imagine that as a pastor. Take it to level 10. You've got every single person in the congregation that you want to know and express love toward and help connect with Jesus. And so pretty soon, your world compresses or constricts or gets narrowed into just church people. And that's not what happens here. Jesus intentionally moves out to non-church people. Where is the place where you are intentionally moving out to non-church people? When I moved up here, and actually a few years ago when I took a job and I was really close to Specialized bikes. I'm a cyclist. Specialized bikes, great bikes. Big fan, go Specialized. I decided to start joining their lunch ride. Not because it was a great form of exercise, although it was brutal and made me cry many times. But I needed an outlet. I needed a place where I could go and connect with non-Christian people and do what Jesus did, put myself in places where non-Christian people gather. Is there a place in your world where you do that? Or as a Christian, have you become so inundated with Christians that you don't have any non-Christian friends? A book came out a while ago called The Art of Neighboring. It's a great book, and it convicted the heck out of me. It asked the question, you actually put on a diagram, your house in the middle, and then you put the houses all around your house and asked the question, how much do I know about each of my neighbors? Do I know their name? Do I know their family members' names? Do I know what they do for work? Do I know what gives them joy and what makes them sad? Do I know that stuff? And man, I was convicted. I knew one name of one neighbor because I was so caught up doing church people. This call to discipleship is this radical call that Jesus says, no, I'm not going to go where it's easy. I'm not going to go where I'm popular. I'm not going to go where it's convenient. I'm not going to go where I know I will meet people's expectations. I'm not going to go where I'm familiar and where familiarity is what helps me build a relationship. I'm going to go where I'm uncomfortable. Will you go someplace uncomfortable? Will we? That's a big part of what we're doing with the Kind Faith, right? This is uncomfortable. It's weird. We're not meeting in a classic church building. We're meeting in a backyard that hopefully gives people who would never go to a church building access. It's uncomfortable to put ourselves in that position, but that's what Jesus does. And so challenge number one out of this passage is, am I willing to put myself in a place where I'm not comfortable and not familiar with people who I don't know I'll be popular with people who I don't know agree with me? And will I put myself in that place to bring the gospel message and build relationship? And the second part of the passage, because I haven't even addressed that yet, but it's really significant. In verse 40, it says, and a leper came to him, imploring him, and kneeling, said to him, if you will, you can make me clean. And moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I am, and I will be clean. This has been with me since my first introduction to this message. My youth pastor introduced this reality to me my freshman year in high school. I was at youth group and we were talking about this story, and Larry, my youth pastor at the time, said, you got to understand what Jesus did here. For a leper, and if you read in the book of Leviticus, if you have leprosy, if you have sores that show up, and the way it goes is if the hairs turn white on the sores, then you must be declared unclean. And the priest is to look and examine and declare you unclean. And then you have to dress in rags. You aren't even allowed to dress in normal clothes. You have to dress in tattered rags, and you have to cover a part of your mouth, and you have to wear a head covering. You basically have to walk around with a huge sign on you that says unclean. And on top of that, whenever you approach somebody, you have to declare unclean. We were walking to Starbucks the other day. It's just down the street. And I brought my mask. And as soon as I saw somebody coming, I was like, oh, okay, I better put on my mask as we pass one another and be a good neighbor. For a leper to be a good neighbor, when I saw that person that far away, I would have to yell at them, I am unclean. And they would have to put a wide berth around me, not a mask. They would have to walk at a distance around me to ensure that there was no possible way for them to touch anything that I touched. Could you imagine? Lepers were untouchable. And Jesus reaches out and touches. The fear of that is remarkable. I know Jesus didn't have fear, but I know the fear of walking into a hospital where there's all that sickness, and what are you going to confront, and what are you going to be faced with? All of that is the call of discipleship. That we would actually reach out and touch a broken, diseased, and hurting world. That's what Jesus does here. And that's our call of discipleship. Who in your life is diseased and hurting and broken and unclean? Jesus gives us the example, and he reaches out and touches and declares cleanliness over them. And so, do we live into that challenge? This desolate place of decision that God has led Jesus to multiple times. John the Baptist was led to, the people of God were led to, we get led to as well. And then we are invited into a similar decision. Will we move toward what's comfortable and popular? Will we move toward what's healthy and normal? Or will we move toward what's unpopular and unfamiliar, and move toward what is sick and unclean? I had a hilarious comment on our YouTube video last week. I won't share who said it, but it was wild. Tyler and I are doing a Bible podcast, and somebody said to us on the comment section, they said, hey, I'm not watching it because you guys come off wrong to me. And we were like, we engaged. Oh, sorry. How can we help? And the statement was, no, you just come off as wrong to me, so I don't want to engage you at all in any way. And that is exactly the opposite of what happens right here. It's exactly the opposite, where we look and say they have a political view that I don't agree with. They have a philosophical view that I don't agree with. They have a way of looking at the world I don't agree with. They have relationships I don't agree with. They have a disposition I don't agree with. They have an attitude I don't agree with, a mood I don't agree with. Pick it all, and we run away. And Jesus ran toward. Jesus reached out. And that's the disciple work that we're called to. So where is it that you need to go where there's discomfort in a community that doesn't know God and is unfamiliar to you? And build relationships and bring the gospel there. And who is broken, unclean, needs healing, that you can reach out and touch and engage and walk together in. That's the challenge of this passage, and I find it amazingly challenging, but it is a point for me to consistently consider as I engage God in prayer and as I look at how I structure my weeks. And so I invite you to ask those questions this week. God bless you and have a great week. Forward this if anybody you know needs to hear it, and like this, it helps us, and even more importantly, we would love your comments. So thank you and have a great week. Bye.